Crafty Gemini. I post weekly videos right here on my YouTube channel. And in this 5th video of my Garden Confetti Quilt Along series, we are piecing together our quilt blocks. Now, I will provide you with the diagrams for each of these 3 designs, and I find that it's quite easy to kind of look at the individual block, then stop, grab the pieces that you need, make that block, set it on your design wall, and then continue working your way around like that until you end up with all the blocks that you need. Now, in all the square fabrics, meaning these squares that are featured as solid squares in our design, which in this design are all of these squares, okay? Everything else is triangles. But the squares themselves, or the fabrics featured in those squares, they're non-directional except for one print, and that is the house print. So what that means for you in these designs is that you basically will need to decide on which design you'd like to make first, or you can make all the blocks except for the 3 ones that have the house square on it, put it up on your design wall, come up with the design that you want, and then go back and complete these 3. And the reason I say that is because depending on how the finished block itself is oriented will determine how you need to orient the little house print square before sewing it in. Now that might seem a little confusing at first, but let's put together block number 1 so you can see what I mean. I see that the top left is the white confetti print, and then we start picking out the pieces that we need based on what we see in the illustration on the sheet I printed out. So here is how they all go oriented. Now to sew these together, we need to put together 2 separate halves of the entire square. One of them is a solid piece of fabric, and then this one that's made up of smaller components need to be sewn together before we can go back and sew it to the other one to complete a full square or our quilt block. And that's the edge that's going to be sewn there. First thing, we need to grab one, and you're going to put them pretty sides together. What we're wanting here is that the raw edges match up along the top edge and the right edge of both the triangle and the square like you see here. Both these edges across the top and the right hand side need to be flush before we can sew it in place. Then you'll go back and repeat the same thing with the other triangle so that the bottom edge is completely flush. All right, and you're going to have an overlap right there where both of these triangles meet. That's what's going to give us that 1/4 inch excess that we need to be taken up in our seam allowance. So let's put this one on top of that one, then that one will be sewn secondly. Orient it correctly the way it's going to look as the finished block is going to look. Then I flip one onto the other, grab a pin, and we're going to pin this in place and then head over to the sewing machine so we can complete the block. So I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance here to stitch down this side, and I like to just put them all together, so we'll open it up here in one shot and just finger press that back. Then take the other triangle the way that it's supposed to be oriented, making sure that the raw edges match on the side and along the bottom, along that right angle corner. Stitch this one into place, and then we'll go back and attach it to the other side. So finger press that, and then we'll put both of these together to complete the quilt block. So pretty sides touching, one on top of the other, and stitch this together, again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And for these blocks, because the white or the white confetti print is made up of just one complete piece of fabric without any additional seams like this side, I go ahead and press the seam allowance up that way. Now in the back here, because I just sewed up the whole block at once, I didn't stop to cut the dog ears, you can always go back and just trim it off of the seam allowance there as well. So give it a nice press and set it aside. So if I go to do this first quilt design, this is the first block that I created. I sewed in the little house print just the way it is, the same way the block is oriented. That means if I choose this design, this block will work just fine for it. However, in this one here, the block is oriented differently. If I tried to use this same block, which again has the exact same fabrics, but turned it this way, the print is not oriented correctly. So that tells me that in this second quilt design, if I want to do this design, this square needs to be sewn in here like this instead. Do you see how the little house is turned? It needs to be sewn in here like that. All right? So you need to decide which design you think you want to do. Or, I mean, since there's only 3 blocks that have the house print in it, you can go ahead and make up the other 17 blocks, play around with them, orient them, and then decide which one you're going to kind of solidify your decision. Then orient the pieces of the block in the way that they need to be oriented for that design, and then go in and sew this. Now in the third quilt design, that same block is oriented like this. So you can see that the house is wrong and it should be sewn in here like that. All right? So this is the only directional print that you may want to keep an eye out. If you don't want to bother with this, it's not the end of the world. You can sew it in any way that you want to. It's still a big enough piece of the print, I think, that you're able to definitely make out, you know, the little houses, the clothesline, and things like that in the fabric. Now moving on to the second block. And if you notice, in all 3 designs, block 1 is the same as block 1 is the same as block 1. Okay? So you can take it 1 block at a time and just looking to see, you know, the directional print when you get to the house one, how you've oriented it. So block 2 is the same in this quilt and in this quilt. They're oriented exactly the same. In the third design, it's turned. Okay, but because there's no directional prints there, don't worry about it. You can turn that second block any way that you want, depending on the design that you choose. So let's make this second one up. It's a solid white. All right, block number 2 goes like this. Same thing. Sew them together, flush on the top and on the right hand side. Then I'll add this one and then sew it to this one. Let's head over to the sewing machine. After you give your block a good press, the last thing you need to cut are the little dog ears on the corner. And remember that each of these should measure 13.5 inches by 13.5. Because once they're pieced into the quilt, they're going to come all the way down to 13 by 13 inches. So download the file with the colored image of the prints of the fabric and go ahead and make all 20 of your quilt blocks. So I'm going to get busy sewing and make up my blocks, and then in the next video of this series, we're going to head over to the design wall so we can lay out all 20 of our blocks and see how the overall quilt is going to look. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit it with the thumbs up below, share it across the different social media sites, and don't forget to click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next video that's coming up in this series. Remember, I always include a link for you in the description box below where you can find some additional information on the fabric collection or the products featured in this video. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.